And I'm Amy Jo, and I work at Bridges as the education coordinator. I've been to Bridges now 7.5 years. I was really young when I started. And I started actually as a volunteer a couple of years before that. I've been in the CAC position, and I've been in the education position for quite some time. And I came to it because, like everyone here, I was really passionate about making a difference. But my claim to fame, and I don't know if you know this, is that I was Big Bird's secretary when I was very young, and Miss Piggy's secretary, and Kermie's secretary. So I did a lot of work in many different areas before I ever came to victim services and prevention. So, and there's many stories, but we won't go there. Okay. So today, I'm going to
on Sesame Street. I did not know that.
yes. I really, really did. Let me just see here. Hold on.
Oh, and you can move that black bar down as well.
Okay, hold on. Move this down. That's good. And then I want to go to slideshow. And from beginning. Okay. I'm going to move this so that I can kind of see everybody. It's the only bad thing about this. Okay. So today we're going to be talking about ethical communication. Okay. And it's actually one of the things that I think is most impactful for those of you who have had jobs in other arenas. I think that this is really something that is very, very different. I know that I have a master's in school counseling, and that as a school counselor working in schools, we did not have ethical communication. And so we will talk about that. We're going to talk about how you do it. We're going to talk about steps. We're going to talk about communication skills and the importance of basically saying things to people in a way that they can understand them and hear the content. I really like how many of you were describing your past, and if indeed you had a horrendous 4 years or there were some difficult challenges that you had, you shared it in a low impact way. And I think that that really is important, because when you share things in a low impact way, it means that people can hear the content of what you're telling them rather than be activated by whatever it is that's going on. Okay. So we're going to talk about guidelines for confrontation. We're going to talk a little bit about decision making, and then I have some scenarios so that we can do some practice. Okay, so that's kind of the overview of what we're going to do today. And so ethical communication is a commitment to treating one another with respect and fostering a positive and safe work environment where every voice is valued. This model entails honest, direct, and kind communication among ourselves, with people we serve, and our community partners. Okay, who here has ever had the opposite of this in a work environment? Right? Where people don't necessarily communicate in a respectful, kind, safe way. Okay, and this is really what we all want to do. I don't know about the other agencies because you've worked at agencies, but I know that for Bridges, we take this very, very seriously. And I have a couple of actually examples that I'll share with you later, but we take it very, very seriously. Okay, so let's reflect for a minute. And I just want you to kind of respond to these questions. I tried to animate them so that they would be one at a time, and they weren't. So you're going to see all of them all at once. So let's just look at one at a time, okay? Okay, so who here knows what ethical communication is, other than what I've just told you? Anybody? Okay, so we're going to learn something together, right? Is this a term that you've even heard before? Okay, so you don't think so?
I have.
You have?
No.
Yes.
Yes, and was that when did you hear it? For your work as a CASA? Or,
Or
Oh, no, it was Neil who.
It was Neil.
Oh, sorry, Neil, I can't keep track of everybody's voices.
That's fine. Actually, my my kiddo also works at Turning Points Network, and they practice ethical communication. So it's a term and a policy that I'm very familiar with because my kiddos shared about it.
Okay.
I couldn't tell you what the definition of it is specifically, but I do know of it.
Okay, awesome. And so what about the word confrontation? What do you think of when you hear the word confrontation? Arguing?
Just being loud.
Being loud? Yep. Anyone else? Yep, thanks.
Discomfort.
Discomfort, absolutely. What else?
Something aggressive,
Okay, aggressive? Yep.
not necessarily sensitive.
Not necessarily sensitive or empathetic, maybe? Yeah. What else? Anyone else? So everything that you brought up were negative connotations to that, right? Not positive ones. And we're going to talk more about that. And what are some of the communication challenges you've had with your peers or your colleagues? Who here has ever had any challenges? I'm sorry, thank you. Yeah, Lisa, what, and can you describe what they've been?
I think in trying to, like, I think more that I've had to deal with other people's control issues
Okay,
on situations, and so it makes communication challenging.
okay, all right, yep. All right, so when there's been kind of a power imbalance? Yep, anyone else? Anyone
Yeah,
else?
and I feel also some people don't really understand what you're saying. So I feel lack of understanding of your message.
Okay, so there's a lack of understanding, and there are power dynamics that are in play as well. And there's many different kinds of power dynamics, right? In terms of a supervisor and supervisee, in terms of age, right? In terms of race, right? In terms of a lot of different things. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. Does anyone else have more? And thank you for keeping your eye open for me because I can't keep track of everybody. Anything else that you can think of? Communication challenges? Things that get in the way? I know that for me, and I don't know if this is true for you, but for me, my face tells all. Even with a mask often too, but so it's hard for me sometimes to really keep my body language consistent with really what I'm trying to communicate. It's challenging. It's challenging with clients. It's challenging with colleagues and peers. It's just challenging in general. Is there anyone else here that has that experience? No? Yeah, okay. Just like validate me, can you? Validate me. Okay. So confrontation, even though we think about it as all the things that you were talking about in terms of it being negative and loud and aggressive and uncomfortable, the definition, if you were to look at the definition of confrontation, is simply a meeting to discuss differences in a respectful manner, which sounds pretty positive to me, right? And so I just want, we will be using the word confrontation, but I do want you to think about that because I think it's really important to remember that confrontation isn't only negative, right? Who here is uncomfortable with the whole idea of confrontation? Raise your hand. Okay, it's hard, right? It's really, really hard. Yeah, and thank you, Neil. I'm trying to look everywhere, so if I don't acknowledge you, it's just because my eyes are at one side of my head and not the other. Okay, so I'm going to try to move this so that you can read it all. Okay. Okay. There we go. I just want to see you guys in a minute. Is there a way that I can? Yeah.
Up at the top, you can kind of click where there's two boxes in blue. You
Yeah.
can click over to one of the kind of smaller, the one box or the one all the way over, and that'll hide them for a minute.
Okay. All right. So these are just some guidelines for ethical communication. The only problem is I really want to see everybody.
Yeah.
It's a problem. All right, so take responsibility for my part in fostering an ethical environment. Communicate in a fair, considerate way, mindful of tone, body language, and intent. You don't bring other advocates' personal lives into conversations, and you really don't share your own either with clients, so that may come up. Keep ethical communications private. You don't want to make alliances with other group members. We're going to talk more about this. Not to discuss another group member unless it is for the purpose of preparing to get clear with that group member. And I don't know about you, but even if you're working in a restaurant, you know, you often hear people talking about other people and he did this or she did that. And those are the kinds of things that really can become noise that can distract people from what they really need to be doing at their job. Don't make assumptions. Consider all voices in a group. Seek assistance with ethical communication when you're uncomfortable, and seek assistance with ethical communication when issues cannot be resolved. Okay, so those are kind of what's really important. And so if a problem with a coworker, a problem with a coworker arises, you want to ask the person if you can speak with them in private at an uninterrupted time. You want to make sure that you create enough time for that conversation. You have to acknowledge and remember that it is going to be uncomfortable for both of you. To give the information in a respectful, fair, and considerate way. Follow the guidelines of confrontation. And if someone comes to you to discuss an issue that they have with you, listen in an open and non-defensive manner. Oops. So let's say that you have, and I'm going to give you an example of when I learned this the hard way. So because of my job right now, we have 2 floors of Bridges even now. And on the upstairs part of Bridges is kind of where the administrative offices are and the business offices. And then downstairs is really the crisis center. So a lot of times, if it's really busy downstairs, I have no idea. I have no idea what's going on. And so one day I was working on something and I needed help with it. And I very rarely ask for help. Asking for help is a really hard thing for me to do. Often, I don't know if that's true for any of you, but it sometimes is really hard for me. And someone walked by the door in my office because the door is open, and I asked for help. And she basically dissed me. She basically said, "I can't help you, I can't help you." And she continued running. And I was kind of pissed because I thought to myself, I never asked for help. I really needed help, or I wouldn't have asked for it to begin with. And why is she dismissing me that way? So I kind of put it aside, and every 2 weeks we have supervision. And I went into my supervisor and I said, "This thing happened." And she said, "You have to say something." And I said, "Well, it was 2 weeks ago." She said, "You have to say something. Because if you don't say something, it will never go away." I said, "Well, it's like not a big deal. You have to say something." So 2 weeks later, I saw with my supervisor again, and she said, on her list, she said, did you talk to this person about this interaction?" And I said, "No." I said, "Now it's been a month. I mean, it's really not a big deal. I even forgot about it. I mean, why are you bringing this up?" And she said, "Well, there's ethical communication, and by contract, you have to bring this stuff up. And it doesn't go away unless you talk about it." So finally, 2 weeks later, now it's 6 weeks, okay, 6 weeks after this happened, on her list, she says, "So have you spoken to such and so about such and such?" And I said, "No." I said, "Now it's 6 weeks later. And she said, you have to say something. So I called the person in, or I emailed them and I said, do you have a minute to talk? They came up, we closed the door, so it was just private, it was the two of us. And I told her about, do you remember the day when I was asking you for help and you dissed me? And she said, well, yeah, but what you don't understand is that we had an abuser that ran into the office and we were on lockdown trying to figure out how to call 911. I didn't know. But all of a sudden, it made sense and it went away. So I think it's really important to remember the importance of hearing the other person and figuring out the context of what a certain interaction is. And that's my son. I did not turn off my phone. I'm going to ignore it. I know exactly who it is. You can look at my phone and see it, right? So if you set up a time to speak with a coworker and make a new appointment, okay? Tell them that you'll ask a supervisor or the executive director to intervene. If you are uncomfortable going directly to the coworker, ask your supervisor or the executive director to come with you to assist this process. This person is not taking sides or there to speak for you. They are there to assist you in the process and to make sure that the other advocate knows that you've requested a third person to join the meeting. And again, which is sometimes it's hard for us, particularly when things are charged, for us to really hear the whole message. And if you have someone there, they can really guide both of you. So it's a really, really good thing to do. And then if someone comes to you and discusses a coworker, right, which is not very ethical, you must tell them that I will listen to help you in this process, but only if the next person you talk to is the person you have a problem with, okay? We need honest feedback to be able to make decisions based on correct interpersonal information. Secret discussions create alliances in the agency and with each other. And that's also why, by the way, when we do support groups at Bridges, we really ask people not to connect outside a group, because those alliances can really interrupt the dynamic. And it sounds kind of, it really can shift a whole dynamic. And so, so these secret discussions are not okay. Now I'm going to turn it off. I'm sorry. Okay. And it was him twice. Okay. And you have a responsibility to follow up to be sure that they did follow through and speak with their coworker, which is kind of what my supervisor was doing. Even though I didn't like it very much, it's what my supervisor was. Okay. So if you do not go to a supervisor, okay, or you do not have, if you do not have to go to a supervisor, simply say, Advocate A came to speak with me regarding an issue she has with Advocate B. Advocate A has not followed the steps of our ethical communication guidelines. And I have explained to Advocate A that I would be coming to you for guidance. And if you're unable to resolve a conflict, and this says Bridges, but it would be your agency, first step back and think about the conflict as it relates to the agency. What is in the best interest of the agency? Did you follow up with the guidelines for confrontation, which I will definitely be sharing with you, and attempt to compromise or come to some resolution? And if you are still unable to resolve the conflict, ask a supervisor to help you with the process, okay? This is hard for people. I've had jobs in my life where people are always like, backstabbing each other and gossiping and, right, spreading rumors about each other. This is a really hard switch for many of us to make because we're not used to being authentic and respectful and to address things this way. Okay.
Can I ask a question? How would you recommend like the first step before you go to a supervisor? Like when you want to have a meeting with someone to discuss something, how would you?
So I'm going to go through a whole list.
Okay, sorry.
You're ahead of me. I'm going to go through a whole list of the different steps to take, and I actually have a handout to hand each of you, which kind of outlines it. And there also are some other things that I know Caitlin has. Emily may have, I just don't know her well enough to know. But we will make sure that you have information to guide you. And again, you know, you will be meeting with your supervisor so that you will be able to have a conversation and say, you know, I'm struggling with this. Help me understand the best way to handle it. Want to be very, very direct and open. I think that many times people are used to being in situations where they're scolded for making a mistake or scolded for saying something the wrong way. And I think that you'll find, I don't know what the cultures are like at all the other agencies, but I can tell you that at Bridges, mistakes are welcomed. I mean, not that they're applauded, but they're welcomed because it's an opportunity to learn. Okay.
Do you agree with that? I would definitely agree.
Okay, all right. So some of the things that you're going to want to think about is you're going to want to stay focused. You're going to want to listen carefully and try to see the other person's point of view. You want to respond to criticism with empathy without being defensive. You want to own what's yours, so you want to take ownership. And think about, you know, I know that you've been talking about power and control in relationships. This is your way of trying to basically come up with a mutual balance. Use I messages or I statements. I think I messages are now confusing because we have I messages on our phones, but I statements I think are less confusing. Would you agree?
Yes, I didn't think about it that way, but now when you said that,
Yes.
Amy Jo.
Okay. Look for compromise. Take space or a timeout if you need to. Don't give up and ask for help if you need it. And I think that that's really important. It's really important to ask for help, particularly at the beginning of doing this kind of work with each other. Because it is hard, and I'm old and it's hard. So I can't imagine if you're not as old as me, how hard it will be. Was that okay to say? I guess. Okay. So mutual understanding and finding a solution that pleases both parties. Keep in mind, it is important to remain respectful of the other person's view. Okay, really, really important. And a lot of these are probably things that you've thought about or that you've talked about in any of your past work. But I just think it's really important to create a safe space to be able to talk to somebody else and have them hear the content. Okay, and the other thing too is you can share this PowerPoint with them as well.
Thank you.
Oh, well, I'll have to do a little editing. Okay. So guidelines for confrontation, okay? Again, this is simply a meeting. It is not, you know, aggressive or uncomfortable. But before meeting with a person, please keep in mind the following. Ethical communication is part of each agency's resilience. Recognize that you may be uncomfortable and that is okay. Always assume goodwill. Always assume that each person is doing the best that they can do. I say to clients all the time, you know, they'll say, why did I stay? Why did I do this? Why did I do that? And I'll say, you know what? We do the best that we can in the moment. And your best now may be different than what your best was yesterday. Okay, but we always assume goodwill. Acknowledge that there could be multiple truths and try to depersonalize when you're talking to somebody, because that will help you hear the content better. So guideline step 1. Are you ready, Candy? Okay. See, I told you. Okay, does anyone that's on screen have any questions so far? Is this all making sense? You can give me a thumbs up if you want to. Okay, so Lisa, I got a thumbs up. Neil, this is making sense to you? Okay, Jacqueline? Okay, I love it. Okay, so make sure that respectful communication is the first priority. Keep people and problems separate. And this is really important. You want to be able to describe the behavior rather than the person. A lot of people have difficulty at the beginning. We do this the same with our clients when we're asking them to look at the behavior of what someone did to them rather than the person themselves, or describing the actual behavior. Really, really important. Pay attention to the interests that are being presented. Listen first and talk second. So be really open to listening. And you're going to get all of this in writing. So I've got a little tip sheet for you. We can give it to you now. And you'll feel like you have it already. Okay, just do that here. Here they are. Okay. The only thing I have to apologize for is that when I made the copy, it flipped on the wrong side. So you have to. Well, anyway, don't see what I mean. You see what I mean now? Yeah. Okay. So set out the facts and agree and establish the objective. Explore options together and use active listening skills to ensure that you hear and understand the other's positions and perceptions. But what you're constantly doing is what you're doing as an advocate with clients. What you're doing is you're restating, you're paraphrasing, and you're summarizing. Because that's the way one person understands that another person understands what they're saying. Okay. And you want to be sure too that you're in a private space. Okay, that it's a private meeting, because that gives you an opportunity to really have that conversation. And if you need support, it will be a private meeting, but with someone as a mediator, whoever that person could be. And if you have questions, let me know. And Lisa and Neil and Jacqueline, I'm sorry that.
I was gonna say, I'm gonna go scan this to Emily and I'll have her send it to them right now.
Oh, Emily, you're awesome. Thank you.
Family.
Okay, I actually had it electronically. I probably should have done that. But anyway, okay. So gather information, okay? So try to understand their motivations and goals and see if your actions may be affecting these. Try to understand the conflict in objective terms, listen with empathy, and try to understand the other person's point of view. Identify issues, I statements, which are better than I messages, as I told you, remain flexible and clarify feelings, okay? I mean, these are basically good, this is basically strategies for good communication, okay? Okay, so the third step is that you need to agree to the problem. You'll need to agree what the problems are that you're trying to solve before you can find a mutually acceptable solution. Sometimes people see different but interlocking problems. If you cannot reach a common perception of the problem, then at the very least, you need to understand what the other person sees as the problem. So to brainstorm possible solutions will help you both have some fair input on generating solutions and be open to all ideas, including ones you've never considered before. And by step 5, the conflict may be resolved. Both sides will understand the position of the other and a mutually satisfactory solution may be clear, but there are 3 guiding principles here: be calm, be patient, and have respect. And here are some things to avoid, okay? Avoiding conflict altogether is something to avoid, okay? Being defensive and overgeneralizing. And this is something that you've probably heard before if you've taken a psych class or whatever. Always thinking that you're right. Okay, people who are in some kind of conflict have to take ownership of each other. Psychoanalyzing or mind reading. It's really, really important. Forgetting to listen, playing the blame game, trying to win the argument, making character attacks. So person leaves dishes in the sink and labeling them inconsiderate or lazy, okay? How could you say that in a different way? Who here lives with someone who leaves dishes in the sink? What could you say to somebody? Remember, we're separating the person from the issue or the person from the problem. I feel, how would you fill that in? I feel what?
The dishwasher probably needs to be.
Okay. How do you feel though when you get to a sink that's filled with dirty dishes? I know how I feel.
So anxious.
Okay, so I feel anxious when I get to the sink and it's filled with dirty dishes because. What would you say?
Because there's dishes in it and not in the dishwasher.
Okay, that would be one thing to say. What's another way that you could say that? I feel anxious when I get to the sink and it's filled with dishes because.
Because it means that I might have more work to do.
Okay, or maybe it makes me feel like I'm the one that's expected to do the work, right? It makes me feel anxious because I had a long day at work or whatever, right? So I just want you to be thinking about that you can have, and I have a very funny story too, but I'll hold off on it. That sometimes you really have to think about what it is you want different and what the results you want to do. Because if I was somebody and I was told that I was inconsiderate or lazy, would I want to put the dishes in the sink? No.
No.
So you have to really, right, Neil, you got to really think about it. Okay. And stonewalling, refusing to talk or listen to someone's concerns. Okay. Who here has ever experienced any of these challenges? Okay. And what I'm telling you is that these are the kinds of things that you really have to think about. And this is not only ethical communication, this is just in terms of communication in general, right? If you're communicating with a peer, with someone you live with a family member, with a friend, you want to be able to open up conversation in a way that feels safe and comfortable for both people. Okay. Any questions so far? No, everybody's looking okay? Okay. So the key points for confrontation. It helps to take a positive approach to resolve conflict. The discussion is courteous and non-confrontational. The focus is on issues rather than on the people that you have the issue with, right? So focus on the issue. Ethical communication feedback helps us grow and move forward. It helps us get better at what we do. And conversation starters, I've been avoiding mentioning until now because I'm bringing this up because I realize I should have mentioned this sooner. I am not always sure the best way to approach this spot. Okay, so how would you finish this conversation starter? Okay, let's just go around the room. How about starting with Meg? I've been avoiding mentioning this until now because I
Was nervous about how it would make you feel or how you would react.
absolutely, okay. I am bringing it up now because let's see, Kim.
Because I was afraid that I might sound aggressive.
Okay, well, yep, okay, yep. Okay, what about you, Kate? I realized that I should have mentioned this sooner.
Because I wasn't sure how you were going to feel about it.
Okay, awesome. Okay, how about you, Lisa? I am not always sure the best way to approach you about. Oh, can't hear you because you muted, my friend. Good.
Oh, sorry, I don't know. I'm not always sure the best way to approach you about. Yeah, I don't have anything coming to mind.
Okay, can anyone help Lisa?
I have something.
Okay, Neil, go for it.
because you often get angry when I bring things up.
Okay, the reason that I say this is because I've noticed that when I've approached you in the past, you have, Neil,
Not reacted positively to what I've had to say.
okay, all right, or I don't feel heard, right? And I really, this is important to me. Absolutely, okay. And I can't see the bottom, so I don't remember. Okay. So all of this communication is really, really important because it's not only about how we deal with each other one-on-one, but it's also about how we deal together as agencies and as groups in terms of addressing issues and problems. So what do you think the connection is between consensus and group decision making? Why do you think I'm bringing up this as a question? Does anyone have any ideas over there? Jacqueline, do you have an idea? You have to unmute yourself, though. Yeah, do you have an idea?
I think the major difference is agreement. Like not really, but I think agreement.
You think what?
Agreement.
Okay, so if we're talking about consensus in terms of one-to-one, then the group decision-making is kind of taking that to the next level as a group, right? To make sure that everybody is communicating with each other. And then consensus means that people are working together to come to agreement, right?
Yeah.
Just like you do when you're working in ethical communication.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah.
All right. So here are some characteristics of group decision-making. Again, we want respect for every person's insights. We want everyone to have time to express themselves, which is why it's really important to create a safe space. And if you actually are working in an environment where people are working together and communicating with each other in an ethical way, when those people get together as a group, they have a skill set. That means that they are able to be more successful communicating together as a larger group. Allowing opinions to be changed by the insights of others. The objective is to reach full understanding of an issue, which means really listening, being present in the moment and really listening, exploring and gathering all the information and facts, broadening one's own perspective, allowing to understand reasons for a position or fundamentals of an idea, and bringing out all opinions, including opposing and conflicting views. Okay. And the product created out of the interaction is between all the contributors. And the holders of all positions will be given to reevaluate with further information, perceptions, discussions, and thinking. Okay. And part of this presentation that I actually took out was a whole thing about everybody's role in terms of group decision-making and consensus. But I think that you kind of understand what's important, right? That each person has to have a safe platform to communicate what they're thinking and feeling. They also have to feel heard, and they actually have to have support or whatever support they need to be able to come to some kind of agreement, okay? And so these are just 3 different definitions that are really important in terms of consensus. Consensus is the agreement among a substantial number of group members reached after sustained study and ethical group discussion. Consensus is a sense that what the group supports. It is not a vote, consensus, simple majority, or anonymity, right? It's basically just, it's not voting, but it's an opportunity for people to talk and to come up with some kind of group agreement, okay? Standing aside is a statement of non-agreement with a decision. So if you're in a group of 20 people and you go around the room and, Susie says, that she's in agreement, and someone else says that they're in agreement, or Neil says that he's in agreement. If somebody then says, I'm standing aside, it's because they're not really sure what they want to do, and that's okay. But you just want to make sure that that person has a chance to share their voice. And blocking is a strong statement of disagreement with the proposal of no willingness to have the proposal affirmed. A person's name can be recorded in the minutes if desired. So you either have someone that can agree, someone who's kind of not sure, or somebody who really disagrees. But framing it this way is just, it feels less judgmental, I guess. Okay. Okay. So when you're talking about the process of decision-making, group decision-making, you basically want to present the issue, which is what you're going to do in ethical communication. You want to make sure that there's clarification, right? Which is exactly true about ethical communication, to make sure that all the parties understand. You want to come up with a proposal, and then you want to have a discussion so that you can build towards some kind of amendment that can be either accepted or rejected or refused, okay? And so the call for consensus means with or without standing aside. No consensus blocked if a new proposal is put on the table, okay? Again, this is the same thing as ethical communication, but it's how we deal respectfully when we're working in a group. And there's a consensus checklist as well. So does each group member clearly understand the proposal and need for a decision? Did each idea represent received comments and consideration? Did members who disagreed with the proposal express their concerns and reservations? Is any group member hesitant to actively support the proposal? And are there alternative proposals or amendments? Have the reservations of people who stood aside be recorded if you want to. But again, this is the same thing, but just in a big group. And so we use consensus because it makes better decisions, more ownership by individuals, better implementation accountability. It supports the values consistent, I know, with the Bridges mission statement. I'm not familiar with the mission statements of all the other agencies. They empower each group member to be focused. They're inclusive, no majority or minority groups. All participants have the right and responsibility to fully participate. It equalizes power within the group, reinforces skill building, and supports coalition building. And I know that a lot of what you've been doing and what you will continue to do in this training is really team building. And this is the same kind of trust building that's really important, particularly with the type of work that we do. I mean, I think that it's very hard work. And the idea of doing that in a silo without the support of your colleagues and peers can be really, really overwhelming. And so creating this kind of connection with the people in your agency is really, really important. Oops. Okay. So agreement with core values and principles. Everyone has a voice. It's not hurried. All members need to attend to everyone's attitudes, and the group will support and encourage all members to develop skills of participation, communication, facilitation, and problems. So consensus is not total agreement or unanimous, thank you, vote. Consensus is choosing not to make a decision, sometimes compromise, and a group coming to the best decision at the time for the group. Okay. Has anyone ever been in a situation with someone who, let's say, is a supervisor or who is a different level than they are in terms of a hierarchy in a company, or your family or whatever that has struggled to have these kinds of conversations? Has anyone ever done that? Okay. And so what I'm really encouraging you to do, we have to really be intentional about acknowledging that there are power dynamics, even though healthy relationships don't have power dynamics, but in certain settings, there are power dynamics that truly need to be acknowledged. Okay, so what did you think of all of this? What did you think of all of this? Does it sound familiar? Does it sound unfamiliar? Does it sound scary? Does it sound, what do you think?
It sounds very unfamiliar for me because when back in the workday, when I was working, this wasn't possible, and people were disrespectful and not concerned about other people's feelings. And that went on for years or decades, really.
Yeah.
And so I'm really happy to hear something like this because that's new to me. And I'd really actually like to read a book about it if there's one that you can
I
recommend.
bet that there are, one of the things, and I will actually give this to, although I can send this to you electronically too, Caitlin.
Sure.
So this whole idea of ethical communication, I have to pull something out, I know I did. There's so much in here. It's by someone named Kit Evans, and she was actually somebody, and it is an article. Again, the copies are wonky. But this is an article that she wrote in 1990. She's actually the one that came up with this whole concept. And so I think that it's really important, if you want to continue learning about this, to read this. So I'm going to give this to you, and I can even send it.
Actually, I think we
electronically.
probably have this saved on our U drive somewhere too.
Yeah, I'm sure you
I
do.
know I've seen
I'm
it
sure
somewhere.
you do. I'm sure you do. So I have 2 copies. Here,
You know,
we go
it's
crazy.
interesting about that is that when you think about it even more to different levels, is that the power dynamics between men and women, both or either being bosses, you know, if you're the boss and you're a man to a woman or the other way around.
Yeah,
Those dynamics shift, you know, a lot. And so this kind of communication is super important.
yeah.
Especially in a legal sense, because if you think about it, well, just in general, I mean, harassment in the workplace and stuff like that, this can be a helpful tool to try and mitigate those problems because just supervisors that have been on the job for a long time and don't understand this concept or how people communicate. I have to say now, because in the past it wasn't that way, but how people communicate now, the whole dynamic is different.
It is in many places, but I would really invite you to think about not only what Kate Evans talks about, but also the fact that our society has so many insidious messages having to do with power and control, that I don't think that that's true everywhere. I think that the coalition and the crisis centers, at least that I'm familiar with here in the state, have made this concerted intentional effort to communicate in this way. But I'm thinking, I mean, I think that if I went to a school district now and was working as a school counselor or whatever, I'm sure that the dynamics that I dealt with 10 years ago are still going on, right? So I think that it's true. I think idealistically, we want to think that everybody is communicating so much better. And I think there is a focus on being in the present and partnering with people when you're talking to them, whether it's clients or with each other. But I mean, I wish it was much more solved or resolved than it actually is. You know what I mean?
No, I think it's really exciting.
Yeah,
At
it
least
is.
to me, I mean, it's like, wow, that's great.
Absolutely, yeah, it is really exciting. The other thing that I think people struggle with too is that I've spoken to people that have worked at Bridges, and it's one thing when it's really important to be looking at the behavior and the issue at hand rather than the person. Because sometimes, and this we all know, need to be perfectly honest, sometimes there are people whose chemistry and our chemistry just doesn't jive. And the point of this is not to say, oh, to be honest with you, I really don't like you, right, Canty, and that's why we're struggling like this. I just don't like you. So just know, right, that I don't like you, because that's not what it's about. It's about if something specific happened that could be addressed. If you're struggling with somebody, obviously, you can always go to a supervisor and say, you know, I'm really struggling with this person. Like, there was someone that was working at our agency, and whenever we had a presentation, she was always a half an hour late getting there, always. And the behavior was something that was really hard for me, but there was a cultural piece as well. So I had to basically step back and be able to kind of tease those pieces out so that we could communicate it in a way that she could hear my frustration and we could come up with a plan about it. Does anyone over there have, it looks like Neil's unmuted. I love that. So do you have, or Lisa, do you have any thoughts about this?
It's interesting because it's like, it depends on the insular nature of the people who have worked in a place as well. So the last place I worked at, there were, you know, people who have been there for 30 years who had a way of doing things, and you either did it their way or it was a problem. And there was just a certain culture there of, you know, not respecting everybody's voice and saying, well, I've been here for 30 years, so I know better than you. So, you know, your opinion doesn't matter. And so it contributed a lot to why I left. I just,
Like that.
you know, wasn't able to have conversations to say, maybe, you know, it needs to be different in this place, and it just wasn't going to happen. So I had a choice of staying or leaving, and leaving was the better choice for me. Because there was no way it was going to change, because the people that were there were just too set in their ways, and they weren't interested in doing things differently.
Yeah, and I think that, has anyone here ever heard of the Circle of Courage? No, okay. So it is actually from an old Native model of looking at different behaviors or different things that people need in order to feel successful in their lives. And Neil, you just kind of brought this to me, but there's 4 different elements. One of them is belonging, right? Which is basically what we're talking about. The second is independence, that people need to feel that they can do things independently or they can grow towards independence. Another is mastery, that they can master something and get really good at it. And the last thing is service to others. And the idea was actually used for a lot of kids that were at risk. It's called the Circle of Courage. And Neil, I'm thinking about what you just said in terms of your own work environment. And I think that's when pieces of that are missing, because of that, you couldn't feel, right? You couldn't feel like you really were as independent, that you really belonged when you wanted to belong to the organization, right? All of those pieces, I think, are important for all of us in our lives. And so thank you so much for sharing that, Neil, because I think that that's really true. I think also sometimes people get so stuck in what they think they should, how they think they should behave, that they don't really think about being in the present and being authentic with other people. And I mean, that's for many of us, that is, you know, that's an ongoing journey, right? Does anyone else have any thoughts about this? Lisa, did you?
I guess a couple things came to mind. I don't know that I've really thought of this with all these breakdowns, but I was a town meeting member for 10 years. I was on our town finance committee for a couple of years, and I'll throw my anonymity out there. I'm a grateful member of Al-Anon, and they all kind of, I would say the town meeting and the finance committee followed these same practices, but it was unwritten. And then of course in Al-Anon, there's very strict rules about how you treat one another. And so I think that sometimes for me, I've noticed that it's people that are more comfortable, that have that ability or have come forward and been willing to kind of keep the meeting or the situation in check, in having truth and grace with people, because some people, I mean, these are great ideas, but some people still won't speak unless they feel safe. And so I think that there's always the people that need to kind of keep things in order so that those people can have a voice.
Yep, absolutely. Let me ask you something else, all of you, actually, but you two. What is it, when you're in a situation, what is it that helps you feel safe? Each of you personally. In any situation, what are some of the things that really contribute to your feelings of safety? Does anyone have any thoughts? Because you said, Lisa, that you didn't feel that it was really people needed to feel safe. What does that mean to feel safe?
I think assurance.
Assurance?
Yeah.
You mean being validated?
Yes.
Okay, so being validated is something that really is helpful to you.
Yes.
Neil, do you have any thoughts about that?
Just knowing that when you share your opinion, you're not going to, be quote unquote attacked about it and told that, it's wrong, you're stupid. And not necessarily them saying specifically that you're stupid, but making you feel like your suggestion was stupid.
Yeah. So a place of non-judgment for you, right?
Right.
Is really, really important. Okay. What about you, Lisa?
I think the most times that I've felt safe, and I guess I'm just not one to not feel safe, but I think what makes me feel safe is especially like in new environments, is like being addressed, somebody noticing that I'm there. I don't know, being even willing to call on me, that kind of thing.
Okay, all right. Any of you, what makes you feel safe when you're in an environment or a new environment? Meg, do you have any ideas? What are just some of the things in a space that makes you feel safe?
For me, having time to think. I'm someone who either needs to sit quietly or needs to like talk an idea through. People who know me know I'll talk my way until I get to what I'm trying to say. So either being able to sit with it and put it together in my head or talk it out.
Okay, so giving you kind of space.
A little room to move with the
Yeah,
thoughts.
okay, yeah, okay. What about you, Karen?
I'm just really thinking about this.
What?
And so I'm really trying to think. I think familiarity is one of them for me.
Okay.
I don't like being in places that I don't know.
Okay, and that's hard, right? Because you're all going into places that you don't know, right? So that's really, really hard. So thank you for sharing that. But what are things as you're getting familiar, right? What are some things that can help you feel safer?
Well, if I'm like maybe it's starting out new and not like doing something like long, I guess, or like not doing something how like the organization does it, like having someone just like come up one-on-one and talk to me about it versus like saying like a whole group or something.
Absolutely, which is part of the ethical communication model, right? So that's something that's going to be really helpful. But also we hope that when you go into each of your agencies, that it's scaffolded in a way that you're not jumping into things that you don't feel prepared for. And I think that you'll find, at least at Bridges, because again, I don't know all the other agencies, that the supervision and support is stellar to make sure that you're doing things as you can do them. And that if you have questions, that those questions are addressed and that, you're kind of going on. One of the things for me, I know that hasn't come up and then I want to hear what you have to say, is I know that predictability for me is really important. That if I kind of know what to expect in a certain situation, it's easier for me to feel comfortable. If there's a lot of things that are happening, and think about the work that we do, because the work that we do is a crisis center, right? So there's a lot of stuff that really isn't, but if there are pieces of it that are predictable, if you know that you can count on your supervisor, if you know that you can do certain things, or you can ask for certain kinds of help, that predictability for me creates safety for me. So I don't know if that's true for you. What about you?
I agree with the predictability aspect, and I think validation is also a big thing, and then just feeling welcomed in the environment too.
Okay. Absolutely. Absolutely. What do you think?
I think a culture of knowing that if I have something to say, that somebody will hear it, and not, I don't know if this is the right word, because I always seem to find the wrong words, but like like a conversation being hijacked, and that you're having a conversation with somebody or with a group, and then somebody attacks you out of nowhere, and it's disconcerting, really.
So you have to feel that there's the predictability piece, is kind of what you're talking about, but also the fact that people are listening before talking.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I think that that's really important. And I think out loud, so sometimes for me, that gets me in trouble with people because I just think out loud. That's what I do. So Cassidy's probably thinking to herself, thank goodness that I'm not going to be working with her because she's thinking out loud all the time. Right? What are you thinking then, Cassidy? Is there anything that would really make you feel really safe and comfortable?
For me, it's been a lot of the things that have already been said, but one of the big ones is actions.
Okay.
I have a hard time believing things until I see it. So if an organization says they're going to do these things, that's great, but I don't believe it until I see it happen.
Okay. Yep. Okay. And sometimes it means that you have to be present, which is what we're going to be talking about next, present so that you can guide if something is amiss. You can step up and say, this is something here isn't feeling right to me and I really want help figuring it out or whatever, which is hard when you're in a new place, I know, but that's kind of how we all grow together, right? What are you thinking?
The first thing I thought of was like literally being able to have a cup of coffee in my hand, and I was like, what does that mean? Because I don't need to literally have coffee to feel comfortable, even though I love coffee and I have it all the time. But I was thinking, I just need to like feel comfortable being able to fidget and like moving around, like getting into color here. Like I feel really comfortable, or just feeling like it's okay if I like I'm still listening, even if I'm like doodling or something like that, and like knowing that it's I guess just like feeling like it's an acceptable environment for like neurodivergent people.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Kind of like, and just like feeling like your accommodations will be made, or just like people knowing that I'm still listening, even though I'm doodling or, yeah.
So I just did in this kind of, my husband was a professor at a university and it was a small college and the classes were quite small, and maybe, it was a little bit more than this, but so it was quite small. And there was a woman in the front row of one of his classes that sat down and she would be knitting. The whole class, she was knitting. She was participating. And he, it was at first, he was kind of taken aback that she was sitting there knitting. But at the end of the class, we had a 2-year-old at the time. She actually handed him a sweater. That was a sweater that she knitted in his class for our son. So, and she said, I heard everything, and you could tell from her, how she was participating. But she really needed, some people need to do certain things in order to focus. So it's a lovely sweater, by the way. All right, I do want you to be thinking about all of this, because I think also these are conversations probably that you will continue having, particularly because each of you are basically moving into different cultures. Each of our agencies, although what we do is very similar, the way we do it can be very different. And so, would you say that's a, yeah?
Yes,
Okay.
definitely.
I'm
But it's-
trying.
No,
Okay.
I think that's a spot on, it's, we all, we have our coalition's mission and all of our member programs basically adopt aspects of that mission. It may not be exactly the same, but we're all working towards the same goals. We just might get there differently.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
And your fit's gonna feel different through the process. So that's why these conversations are really important. Okay, so let's see what exciting thing I have next for you. Oh, we're gonna practice. Okay. So I have, and did you scan and send them
Yes,
along?
they are in chat as well as the Dropbox for our virtual
Okay,
people.
and I also have hard copies here as well. Did you make hard copies as well?
Make more, how many do we need?
No, we don't, no.
Okay.
So these basically are just some case studies. And let's see, I just was gonna actually have you pair up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe the two of you, or the two of you, and then maybe the three of you together can just look at these. I bolded out 4 of them that I'd like you to each all talk about. And then if you want to pick one other one, you can do that as well. And then we will debrief.
Do you want to pop them in?
I was gonna say, I'll
Okay.
throw our Zoom friends into a breakout room to have that discussion.
Some extra
Yeah.
copies.
I didn't know, that's why I'm looking to give you water.
And if you feel like it's too loud, like you're welcome to take a quiet seat in the hallway as well if you need to space out at all. Yeah. Jeff, I was just looking, so I found, I wonder if you're familiar with it. I found the first one. Yeah, I've been okay, wow, okay.
Okay.
I just I found an 8-page one too. And the other one, I have to read through it because I'm not familiar with it.
Yeah, send to me definitely.
Because the other one looks like it has some additional commentary on it, so I'm wondering
Okay.
if that was, it's not saved as like no name or like authors of the additional commentary. So I'm like, I'll have to ask Linda about it. She'll probably
Sure,
know.
exactly.
But I was like, oh, I've never
Yeah,
seen an
that's the one
8-page
that,
one.
yeah, that's the one that.
No, that's the one I've seen before.
Yeah.
But when I opened it, I was like, why is this one so much longer? But it looks like it was like I don't know if it was like a work group, but I'd be happy to send it to you just for reference.
What's that dev application?
Oh, we'll talk about that a little bit more tomorrow, next week. But it's like a legal aid application.
Oh, okay.
And the other thing I was going to hand you is this, I can send these electronically, I probably should have. This is guidelines for conversation. That's something else that's not clear.
Yeah. Or like, and like, I guess. Or like that. People, so, you know, like,
I think they should hear it. If you've ever experienced that.
Can't just run to the restroom?
Did she just?
Okay.
Like you look all alone there.
That sounds good.
And everything else it looks like is set.
We probably just had a few more scheduling changes just for.
So
Because why not? But it's just some buffers, it's just some time switches.
But if there is
Nothing content wise.
Yeah, because let me know.
I will, I'll send you an updated copy too. Just so you have
Yeah.
a legitimate version.
I don't, yeah, that's okay. I just was curious as to how it all worked out.
6:03, we believe is gonna come next week, but Crystal this morning was like, I just found out my daughter has a doctor's appointment at 3 o'clock. You know, is there any way we can come before lunch? I'm like, hold on, let me ask.
Yep, no, it's a lot. It's a lot.
But yeah, I think we're still at one of the Angels conference this year.
That's awesome,
So
yeah.
I'm really excited for that.
That's
opportunity.
great.
We'll have them still out here, so we can help kind of process and brief with them. since
Yep,
it's not
yep,
something we
yep.
typically do. But we'll do that, and then, yeah, the following week is basically all helping up with this few more, like, you know, few lots of like team building stuff to fill in.
Yeah.
With my like non-content.
Yeah,
Um,
cool, very, very cool.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's pretty good for me. Mentioning that whole communication in the past few days, so I think this is a good time to introduce it because it's not the first day, but the last day.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. Cool.
Thanks for being. I'm sorry, I didn't catch this.
No, that's okay. I think it's been about the incident and that much time. I'm just gonna give you a little time. You're, I asked you to do 4+, so.
Yeah.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah. I would try to have this conversation with you. Is it this one?
But it's not really my position to go and talk to whoever that person is. It's, you know, the doctors.
You're not supposed to make assumptions or make bias.
Maybe point that out to them.
Say that.
I'm sure that this is the thing.
Yeah.
Finding like a 25 a day and talk to your admins every day.
Like they all want to see supervisor.
Wow. Do you feel that? Feel like it matters,
Yeah. And if that means that's under. I don't want to get them in trouble or anything, but.
Or maybe.
I thought, obviously you could either discuss it with the supervisor and be like, I'm not feeling listened to when she interrupts me.
Yeah.
And feel like, hey, so I feel like you're not listening to me, you're interrupting me, and I don't know if that's intentional.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, that's.
Right? It's
Yeah. Go to Maureen, use I statements, so yeah, like, I can talk to Maureen, staff meeting. And you were interrupting me, and then. purpose or anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so you felt like resolution. Like right when.
Well, I mean, I would try to like talk to them and then also putting it like. Because, I mean, like this. Affecting people, like. Just like, I guess reminding. Of like. A goal.
So it sounds like you're maybe it would be best
I guess, 'cause it seems like she arrived, like,
to explain what
and she did like a wedding office.
and notice that.
And that seems like it's.
Yeah.
No, Lisa talks to you about it.
She was
They don't school.
Yeah.
because it said that she wasn't even on the schedule. I don't know when she was there. She wasn't on the schedule. So she wasn't supposed to be.
Doing whatever she wants.
And it sounds like she was going to be there.
Yeah.
She was going to be there. We're there and not doing.
Yeah, maybe it's a good choice of who to, you're gonna talk to Liz, you're gonna talk to Tara. Maybe it's a supervisor thing, you should go to her supervisor first.
I guess
figure out
that
what's
I'm
all-
saying.
Or even if she's supposed to talk to them.
Tell
Like
them.
at all, maybe she
Remember, so we had to let
him
him get it turned out there.
Yeah, because she would necessarily be blaming them or something. Involved.
Oh, yeah, okay.
But I just.
And also that.
Teenage kind of.
Supervisor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that the supervisor? So you're, oh wait, you had the training.
Oh, yeah.
That's the training.
I didn't.
You really have to.
How are you guys all doing? Or gals all doing? Yeah? Okay.
We have a trash.
Yeah, I see it. I see it.
I was like, I was behind me.
I didn't. It made me super.
Yeah.
So is your son, was he still in school or is he an adult?
He is an adult with significant disabilities, which is why that cost me $43 million.
A lot of these parents, it's like,
Yeah, only 43.
only 43.
Yeah. But he is, he's in subsidized housing.
Okay.
And
And I could see
he's
like,
concerned
so
because he
innocently
has
though,
his
I
inspection
could see
tomorrow,
me, like
and
me
I thought it
having
was
like,
Thursday,
like starting to work at
So
Halo,
like,
and
an
be like,
apartment
why was this
inspection
person
or like-
really
Yeah.
talking? Like, I genuinely like
so he's freaking out.
interested, like I
goodness.
wanna know, and then like
He's
talking to
really
someone about that.
I was gonna say, does he have a lot to worry about or is it
No, it's
unnecessary?
probably, it's probably fine because I
do
really
go
believe,
rails.
Well, and also like,
Sundays,
is that really necessary?
today's only Monday, so.
Yeah, it hasn't
What
been
he
the
could have
long.
done, you know, what he could have done.
Yeah. I think it's like, okay to have.
I think this year that we're.
No, we live in Amherst.
Okay.
and he lives
But
in
I
Nashville.
didn't
Okay.
feel like that.
Where do you live?
I'm right here. in Concord.
Oh, that's cool. What about you?
You're gonna go around.
I'm sorry.
Easy.
Easy peasy.
Oh, yeah.
Those cars.
There is a valid reason.
Just got
Gotten to play with them with the members too much yet, but flipping through them, yeah, they're really good.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay,
Maybe it's confidential. Maybe they're not sharing. It's a big part of this.
Back in person this year.
What is
So
it?
we're just excited that we're back in person this
Yeah,
year.
I know, isn't that nice? I
Oh
know.
my gosh, it's way nicer. It was a long winter, summer, fall, winter, spring.
But everything, oh, it's been long, no, of course, schools are
It's
supposed to
fine.
be out.
They're gonna
But I definitely.
Yeah.
I can so see like they're being curious and like getting like person. But I feel like.
I was gonna say, I missed it, like,
Last
Friday.
I missed it too, because I'm really sorry that I did. And Joy is working still remotely. I'm not-
She comes here like Tuesdays and Thursdays.
And I was
in the office.
Okay. Yeah, I because this time of year, we're always.
And not getting work done
It's
because.
always tough. But I think we're just about Friday too, actually. Meeting, so.
Oh, no. That's okay. I did let Kitty know, but it just, I mean, I tried. I really just can't do that.
No, you really can't.
And it's my birthday first.
Yeah.
And going around and.
Wish I could say I come first, but.
That's another day.
That's another day.
Maybe next year.
Yes.
Wow.
All the floors.
Okay, bye. Why do you do one and one vote?
Okay.
You know what I mean? But I don't know if that's not but it's like, I don't know how you would like.
Good? Okay, did you get through the bold ones yet? Yeah, you got through the bold ones. Did you get through the bold ones? Did you pick one other one to do?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're supposed to pick one? I didn't hear that part.
Okay, so I thought you could do the 4 golden ones. Of these. And then pick one more. Okay, so just, yeah, I'll give you another like 5 or 3 minutes, yeah. It's hard with the mask.
I think.
Check the online post a little message too. just to-
Okay, at 5 minutes, yeah.
Yeah. I feel like.
So I bolded 4 of them and then
I
I
have
said,
heard from sleeping
there's
in
because there were,
losing over that. But
forget it.
Yeah, so.
I think that Michelle should go to.
Oh, yeah.
Their supervisor and be like, I don't necessarily feel comfortable with the communication. I said this thing, it really upset me. But like have a conversation with her about it. Maybe set something up with
Yeah,
her.
it's so hard with.
Yeah,
both of
and
the-
maybe she's
yeah.
also not.
I like it either, all the way one way or all the way.
I
the other.
know.
Yeah. Sit in. wondering.
Yeah, 'cause it's keep the whole community happy.
Yeah,
Okay.
especially, if, yeah, Lisa has already
And
said.
it's
that
kind of
things.
making it seem like they're waiting.
You know, it's not.
Two of them are both agreeing.
Didn't really talk much about boundaries. But I can.
Whatever you have to say,
Yeah.
sure.
At the
I think
top.
that's a new-
I think that was just kind of like the title carried over from last year, so I think
Yeah.
that's okay.
Definitely.
And they're making assumptions.
And is Tina doing hers in person or virtually?
In person.
That's great.
So she was here, she's doing it kind of in two parts, so she came
Okay.
last week on Thursday, and then she's going to come again next Tuesday.
I would go to her supervisor. Or my supervisor.
I'm gonna give you about another 2 to 3 minutes and then we'll start talking with each other.
Oh, yeah.
Was this some of the kind of people who have-
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, here's the numbers, and then be like, okay, thanks, and then, be it. Maybe they've
Well, they're
previously
talking about
talked, they could just like, yeah, hey, I decided that it should. They don't remember.
Yeah. I definitely agree. The situation.
Which I mean, sharing a little bit more, that's-
Okay, so let's reconvene.
Always give that.
All right, and I think we'll start with the bolded ones. And then if there's any other ones that you each took, then we can talk about that. Okay, so you walk into Joanne and Debbie's office and you hear them discussing a coworker, Amanda. They're discussing a Dove application that they suspect Amanda did not complete properly. You are not sure what to make of this conversation. So what would you do? Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Here for them too.
Yeah, so what would you do? Who has some thoughts about what to do in this situation? Lisa, do you have an idea? Or my small breakout group there?
Which scenario are you referring to?
The first one, You walk into Joanne and Debbie's office?
Well, maybe I read too much into this statement, but I thought just walking into somebody's office in the middle of a conversation, I don't know whether one person was trying to get help from the other person as to how to address Amanda. And it says at the end, like, I'm not sure what to make of the conversation. So I guess I really don't know, because I'm walking into somebody's office and two people are having a conversation that I have not been a part of.
Okay, so what would you do?
When we talked about it, I would ask more questions.
Okay.
But that there's a fine line there, because then that can even get into gossiping. But I think overall, I would just recommend that they probably include Amanda in the conversation. You know, why don't you just have a conversation with Amanda and see if you can get it cleared up?
Yeah.
Yep, okay. What about anyone else here?
Kind of ambiguous where you're walking in, but the main thing is like, let's get Amanda involved, especially before like Lisa said, like getting even more of a group talking about Amanda if you're already,
Yeah,
there are already two people in there.
and so what could you say if you walked in and they were having this conversation? What could you say?
You could ask if they've talked to Amanda about it.
Yeah, you definitely could do that. Yep, what else?
You could maybe say like, hey, is it totally appropriate for us to be discussing Amanda's work right now?
Okay, yeah. What about sharing some of the things that how would you feel if you walked into that situation?
Awkward.
Awkward, uncomfortable, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
You think that acknowledging that feeling to begin with might be a really good place to start?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to say, you know what, I just walked in, I know that I'm walking in the middle, but what you're talking about a problem, when you're talking about Amanda, I'm not feeling comfortable with this, right? And to acknowledge that there's something about it that's not okay, and how can we reach out and possibly help Amanda? Right, we plural, right?
Yeah.
No judgment, no whatever. But
Yeah.
opening up, it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to learn. And then again, that's why mistakes, again, we like mistakes because they're opportunities. Right? Any other thoughts? How about Kathy? Do you have any other thoughts? No? Okay. No?
I really liked how you said to make a we statement out of it, because I was thinking you'd maybe recommend, like, I'm in my head, I'd be like, maybe you guys should do this, as opposed to saying like, we could all together find a solution.
Exactly.
Better.
Yep. And again, think of it always as partnering, right? You really want to see how you can partner with someone, because all of us in our work want to really be solution focused. It's not, it's her fault or my fault or his fault or their fault. It's like, what can we do to solve this problem? Do you have anything else to add, or Jacqueline?
Yeah, I would like we decided. I would say that I will actually tell them that they should confront her. They should talk to Amanda, because I'm uncomfortable. I met them discussing her. That is not proper, it's inappropriate. So they should channel their grievances to her and talk to her about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, if it happened and if you were learning something new and you forgot something, what would you want people to do for you, right? You wouldn't want them to be talking about you behind your back.
Yeah. It's awkward.
It doesn't feel good to me. I don't know about you guys, but it doesn't feel good to me.
Yeah.
All right. So a coworker discloses that they went to a client's home to visit her. She also gave the client her cell phone number. What do you think? Is there a problem with that?
Yeah, actually in the group, we actually, like I was of the opinion that I feel it's not proper for you to actually go to your client's house. But some people said it depends. Like I said, yes, it truly depends, but not generally it's not proper to go to your client's house. If you have any meeting, you meet outside, like maybe in a general place, like in an eatery or something, but going to your client's place.
Yeah, okay. And what about the cell phone number piece?
And it's not appropriate too. That is not appropriate.
Said something about not having personal relationships with clients and stuff. So I feel like that kind of falls under that category.
And have you talked about boundaries? Because if that was something that I should have done today too. I can definitely send you something that's kind of a nice little reflective exercise about boundaries. Why don't I do that? Because then
Sure.
at least you'll have that to do since you have so much downtime, right, everybody? So that's something that we can do, but so so going to someone's house, why do you think we say it's not okay?
Well, there's all kinds of reasons why it's not okay.
Okay, so tell me what you think.
Well, for one, you don't know, there could be somebody else in the house that could be, the abuser might be there. And you're getting yourself into a whole pile of, what are you doing here? For legal reasons would be, just be a mess.
But I'm not even talking about legal reasons.
Yeah,
I mean, let's be simple about it. How about just safety?
well, that's what I mean, is
Yeah.
you don't know if there's a guy there or a girl there that's gonna harm you and.
Yeah. what were you gonna say?
Also, for like the safety of the survivor, because the perpetrator could be there and then wait until you leave and then be like, oh, I see you reaching out to someone.
Absolutely. Okay. We do not ever go to, I have never gone to a client's house and I've been doing this for a long time. Okay, so that's a never. What about sharing your cell phone number?
Just crossing a personal boundary.
Okay. Because, you know, we do have a 24-hour support line, all of us do, right?
Yeah.
For clients can call, and even if they do, like we have certain clients that are so smart, they know that at 6 o'clock is when our volunteers are no longer on. So they'll call either before, if they don't want to talk to a staff person and they want to get a new person to be able to share their story, they'll call before 6 o'clock. And then if they want, you know, the experts, they'll wait and they'll call after 6 a.m. So it's like, it's not okay to share your cell phone number. Okay, so if that happened, what could you say? What could you say to, if that happened, what would you do?
I would go to their supervisor or go to my supervisor and share that, that happened and that I felt it was inappropriate and someone should talk to them about it.
And again, I want to just have you think about it a little bit differently. I know that some of you have used the words inappropriate. And I think that we have to, if we're really thinking about language and being not judgmental, you could say, I'm feeling concerned, right? This is concerning to me. I don't really know what to do with it, do with the information, but I'm feeling concerned and I just wanted to talk to that. Again, just reframing it. Okay. It's a Thursday morning and Michelle is still upset about something Lisa said at staff meeting. Lisa said that the new contact sheets are really easy to figure out and cannot understand why people are making so many mistakes. Michelle couldn't sleep. She felt like Lisa had signaled her out and was accusing her of making mistakes. Michelle did not say anything at the meeting and does not want to have a confrontation with Lisa. What do you think? Any thoughts?
Well, nobody can help Michelle unless Michelle speaks up.
Okay, what were you think? What are you gonna say?
I was just gonna say, seeing if like bringing in post supervisor to be like a mediator between their that would make them feel more safe.
Okay, yeah, because in our agency, Lisa is the direct service manager, so there would be a power dynamic as well. And I think that, and just so you also know, there are lots of systemic changes that are happening in many of the crisis centers in terms of just databases and work and the way we're reporting stuff. And so it's overwhelming for most of us. So part of what you also could do is to basically, if Michelle said something to you, say, this is something that many of us are feeling, but it really would be great if Lisa's your supervisor, maybe you can talk to her. And I have actually had ethical communication with my supervisor. It was not easy, but it was something that I did do, and I felt much better when I did it. Okay. Okay. What about the next one? Did anyone? So Joanne is required to give you client referral forms for the CAC. You are not her supervisor. She does not get them to you in a timely manner, and clients are waiting long periods for time for a follow-up call. You talk to her and she continues to turn them in late. What could you do?
It seems like one where maybe, because we were trying to like work this out, because it seems like one where you're kind of supposed to say, I'm gonna talk to a supervisor about this, but that's quite awkward. So we're trying to think of a way to reframe that. Maybe, I feel like this system isn't working well, and maybe we could get some ideas for a different system for how these forms are transferred or how they work, or this whole
Yes.
process.
Or, it's not clear from this as to whether the system doesn't work or Joanne just isn't doing her job.
Yeah,
I mean,
but I
that-
felt like that might be a nicer way to get the supervisor involved and say, you're not doing what you need to do.
Yeah.
Because
okay.
one way or another, the supervisor can then say like, maybe we need a more specific schedule, or what. I'm kind of inferring details just to kind of
Yeah.
make the scenario work, but
Yeah, okay. And maybe, but one of the things, what do you think you could say directly to Joanne before you do that? What could you say? And think about, I feel, right? Think about the I statements. What could you say?
Well, if you've already had a conversation with her about this and it's continuing to happen, I'm not sure that having another conversation with her is going to be beneficial.
Okay. And so your vote would be to talk to her supervisor.
To my supervisor and say, this is a situation that's happening. I've tried to resolve it and it's still an issue, and go from there.
Yep, I need some help. All right, okay. A community member tells you that your coworker Helen was at a meeting and acting in a very unprofessional way. She was disclosing personal information and bad-mouthing the agency. What would you do? Any thoughts on screen there, my virtual friends?
I know when it happened in an agency I worked at previously, we just informed our supervisor of what a community member told us, and let the supervisor deal with it from there as to whether or not they wanted to speak with the community member or find out more information, because that's not something that I think is in the realm of a co-worker to deal with. I think that's something that needs to
Okay.
go to management.
Okay, so you're really talking about boundaries there, right?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. What about in staff meeting, you feel like Maureen is interrupting you and not listening to your point of view? She consistently interrupts you when you are speaking. she does it a number of times and no one says anything, you are not comfortable addressing it in the staff meeting. So what would you do? How about this side of the room? What do you think?
So I was thinking that waiting until after the staff meeting and saying like, hey, is there a time that I could talk to you? And then if you would set a time, go in and kind of use I statements, like, I noticed how like you're doing this and this is how like I felt like I wasn't being heard. I felt like I wasn't feeling validated and like, kind of like, this is how I feel. I was wondering like, what are your thoughts on how, like what you did, like, I guess.
Yeah, you're so close, right? And so to basically acknowledge again the feeling part and then say, you know, people have different styles, like they do. And sometimes I think out loud and that is something that other people get really annoyed at. In fact, they kind of roll their eyes, which is now a really good cue. You're doing it again, right? But yeah, and to say, you know, that you didn't feel heard and that you were hoping that you could come up with a better way of communicating things. And this is what you were thinking, right? Absolutely. Absolutely. No, absolutely. Okay, let's see what the next one is. Tara came into the office today and it was really busy. Before she even had her coat off, she answered a support line call and had a client walking in the door. Tara ran around for 45 minutes addressing issues and she was not even on the schedule. Liz was responsible for opening the office, but she did not arrive until 8:45. When Tara finally got to her office, she found that Liz and another coworker were talking about their weekend plans. The phone was ringing and no one had picked up the phone. How annoyed would you be, I wonder, anyway? How annoyed, right? Yeah, okay. So what would you do?
I think because that sounds like such a heightened situation to be in at the time, to like that Tara would be really heightened in that moment. We were talking about maybe Tara going to the supervisor to kind of discuss it and discuss like maybe like what are the roles supposed to be in the morning and how is that supposed to work? Because I felt like I was running around doing all these things when maybe I thought it was Lisa's role to be doing that
Right,
and Liz's role to be doing that in the morning. And maybe like talking to the supervisor first and the supervisor could decide what to do. Maybe like setting up a meeting with Liz and Tara's, because I feel like going like directly to Liz in that moment would kind of like Liz would kind of feel like taken aback.
Yep, absolutely. And by the way, I don't know about you, have any of you ever had an argument with someone who you really love or care about? Okay. When you're in a moment like that, right? When you're escalated like that, can you think straight?
No.
So if that's the case, you do want to take a moment, right? To stop and kind of just think about it. And then depending on your connection, you could say something, but I think going to a supervisor would be much easier. Also, depending on like, you know, was this something that happened the first week you were at the agency, or was this something that happened over someone you had a relationship with over the last year? And then you then could say, you know, when you come in late, it really is a pain in the neck for me, right? That's just, again, how does it impact you? Okay, and the behavior. Okay, thank you. All right, next one. You're an advocate in the office and another advocate, Mary, takes a call. You hear her give the caller a phone number to an attorney, and that ends the call. You are concerned the caller did not get the services that she needs. What do you do? What do you think you would do? Any thoughts?
I might ask, well, because I'm new at my job, I would say, I'm new at my job, and so I'm just trying to understand how the phone call unfolded. What was she, you know, I'm not trying to butt into your business, but I'm just trying to figure out how I was supposed to answer the call.
Yeah,
I get the
absolutely.
same thing.
And what was it that she was asking for and what, you know,
Yeah.
what did she need? Do you think she got everything that she needed?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, again, the behavior, not what someone did, not the person, the behavior. Absolutely. Okay. An advocate comes to you to express their concern about a decision that was made to accept someone in the shelter. The advocate is questioning the decision and explains why, then asks if you feel the same way. You start to wonder about the shelter assessment and agree that you do have questions. You both then go to another advocate to share your concerns and ask the third advocate's feelings about this. Does this practice fall in line with our ethical communication guidelines? What do you think? Why not?
I don't know exactly the dynamics of the office, but it seems like they're kind of starting to form a little allegiance and
Yeah.
I don't know who
absolutely.
made, there's either someone who made that decision, I don't know exactly the process, but someone
Yeah.
made that decision who you could talk to, or you could ask for a whole team meeting.
Yep, absolutely. And so to splinter off is not necessarily the best way of going about it, okay? And I just want you to be thinking about it, and I'm gonna tell you, this is kind of a personal story, but don't laugh at this story, you promise? Okay.
Promise.
So I've been married for a really long time, like a really, really, really long time. And when I first got married, my husband, who I absolutely adore, never put, and I'm sorry, Neil, I'm having this conversation, but he never put the toilet seat down when he peed, he never did. And so every night I'd get up to go to the bathroom and I'd fall into the toilet. And it really pissed me off. And it takes a lot to piss me off. And so finally I decided I needed to change his behavior. So I took him aside one morning and I said, sweetheart, I said, if you put the toilet seat down after you pee, you would be a perfect husband. Perfect. You'd be perfect. So for the next 2 weeks, the seat, it's going down. It's going down. It's not a problem. I'm waking up in the middle of the night. I'm comfortable. I'm fine. I feel great. It's going down. Turns to me a couple weeks later and he says, I'm perfect, So the moral of the story is the delivery is very important. Whether it's how you speak, whether it's how your body looks, because people that have experienced trauma are more sensitive to body language than any of us who haven't necessarily experienced that kind of intense trauma, take in. They read cues, they're very, 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 like they're really, really vigilant. And so how you communicate your authenticity, your simplicity, your directness, your empathy, your being present with them, all of those things are truly, truly important in the work that you'll be doing. And I'm sorry that I shared that really personal story, but I just think it's really important to think about delivery.
I think it goes back to your talk about confrontation as well. Sometimes it's a little uncomfortable and
Yeah,
you just gotta find a good way to bring it up and.
You got to think about what the result is. Like, what do you want the result to be? And it worked.
Yeah.
It really works for me. Okay,
But like you didn't confront him in the middle of the night, right after it happened. It was.
exactly. I did. I waited until more opportune time. Absolutely. Okay, so let's see what else is here. I think that we're pretty much done. So thoughts or questions? And I just wanted to show you how excited we are because we've got a new location, which is pretty cool. We have this beautiful big building that's just been renovated. And we also, the other thing that's different about Bridges, just so that you know, is that we're really excited. We took our shelter space, which is in an undisclosed location, and we converted it into separate apartments. So we have 4 separate apartments. I think that doing the job as a shelter advocate is really hard work. And it is hard work. But what's really great about this renovation that we did is that people aren't navigating relationships with each other as much, just because they have their own separate spaces. And we were the first in the state to do that, so we're pretty proud of it. And then I'll show you some pictures of our new, this is inside of our, we have a children's room. It actually has a glass partition that is soundproof, so that the kids can play on this side. And then I'll show you, and then this is the soundproof door, and then this is an office space where someone actually can meet with an advocate, so the kids can't hear what they're talking about, which is really cool. And then you know all of this, so I'm not going to share this with you in our contact information. So that's it. And look at my time. Is that perfect or what? So does anyone have any questions? I know it's been a really long day for you. I will send you some more handouts and information so that you can think a little bit more about boundaries, and also possibly some other things that might be of interest to you. So I definitely will put on my thinking cap about that.
Thank you, Amy Jo. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Sure, thank
We really
you.
appreciate it, and I'm sure that we'll have some more follow-up questions later too about, some more nitty-gritty
Okay.
things as they
You
go
got
on
it.
and
You
start
got it.
to experience the real AVAP world.
I know. Well, welcome. We're so excited to have you. Really, really excited to have you. You're welcome. And next time, maybe I'll see you